Am I supposed to read all of these books in July? Yeah. Am I gonna get to those? Probably not. Hey you guys, it's Emily, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys the books that I plan on reading in July. So during the month of July, I will be participating in 3 different readathons, which I know is a lot, but I'm so very excited for all the readathons that I will be participating in. And the first one is the Book Junkie Trials. This is a readathon created and hosted by Rachel Marie, and when she announced this readathon, I just knew that I had to participate in it because Rachel put so much effort and thought into this readathon. It's pretty incredible. I will leave Rachel's announcement video in the description box down below if you guys want to check it out and get more information on this readathon, because to be honest, I'm kind of really bad at explaining what it is. But if you want more information and just like understand this readathon, I highly recommend checking out our video. It's really well explained, and she will be doing a much better job at it than I am. So this readathon is divided into 4 teams. So we have Magi, Outlaws, Bards, and Scribes, and I am Team Scribe. And each team has its own weakness and ability, and the Scribe's ability is that we can change our TBR at any given moment. So like the books that I'm about to present to you guys today might not even be the books that I will be reading in July, because I might just change everything up. But our weakness is that we have to read a book that has over 500 pages. So each team has a different path to get to the Book Junkie Grail, and the Scribe's journey starts at Dwarf Mount, and that's to read a book with a hint of romance. For that challenge, I chose Fixer Up by Tessa Bailey. I feel like romance novels are great for me during readathons because I go through them very quickly. I know nothing about this one besides the fact that it's been really hyped up lately. Melanie and Chelsea have been raving about this book, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. This is perfect for Dwarf Mount because it has more than a hint of romance, and so I'm very excited to dive into this. Our next stop is the Apothecary Towers, and for that we have to pick a book at random from our shelves. So since the way my bookshelves are organized makes it very hard for me to just like pick a book at random because I have different shelves located in different areas of my room, I went ahead and created an unread bookshelves over on Goodreads, and I just used a random number generator to pick a number out of that shelf, and the book that was associated with that number was the book that I picked. So the random number generator chose Call Me By Your Name by Andrea Ackman. This is a book that I've had on my TBR forever, so I think this is perfect. I've had this book for over a year now. I remember in my very first book haul, I altered this book, and I still haven't read it. So I'm very excited to dive into this. I don't know too much about the plot of this. I just know that it's set on the Italian Riviera, and we are following a romance that blossoms between an adolescent boy and a grown man. I know this has been made into a movie, so I might try to watch the movie after I read this, and I've also heard that the audiobook is narrated by one of the actors in the movie, so I might try to listen to this on audio. But I'm very excited to dive into this. I've heard great things about it, and I know there's a sequel coming up, I think soon-ish, so it's the perfect time for me to read this. Next, we stop at the Great Library, so we have to pick a book that has been on our TBR forever. I could have chosen Call Me By Your Name for that, but I decided to go with Legendary by Stephanie Garber. This is a sequel to Caraval, which was one of my favorite books of 2017, and for some reason, even though the sequel has been out for over a year now, I still haven't read it. I don't know what it is because, like I said, I really enjoy Caraval, but I thought that this was about time that I read the sequel, especially since the 3rd book and the final book in this trilogy came out recently. But in this book, we are following Tella, Scarlett's sister, and she is trying to find the master of Caraval legend. Our next stop is The Drowning Deep, and for that we have to read a book that has a rich world building. And so I chose Obsidio by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. This was actually a recommendation from the queen herself, Rachel, and I just thought that this was perfect because I have been looking for an excuse to read the 3rd and final book in this series. So like I said, this is the 3rd book in the Illuminae Files series, and I've been absolutely loving this series, and so I'm very excited to dive into this final book, even though I'm kind of scared. I'm not ready emotionally, but I won't tell you too much about the plot of this because I feel like this is a book that you should just dive in blind. That's what I did, and it really took me by surprise, so I think this is the perfect way to read this. I will actually be listening to this on audio while reading the physical copy because this is told in a case file format, like a multiple media format. Like we have drawings, we have interviews, and this will also be the book that I choose for my weakness because it has over 500 pages. Actually, it has 615 pages, and I feel like even though this is like a very thick book, this is a book that I can read quite fast because A, I listen to it on audio, and B, the formatting makes it very easy to fly through it, and so I am very much looking forward to reading this book. Our last and final stop as scribes, or for any team for that matter, is the Bookie Trails, and for that we have to read the group book Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Now, I wasn't that interested in Stardust, but the queen has been merciful and has decided that for those of us who couldn't get our hands on a copy or just didn't want to read it because either we've read it before or we're just not interested in it, we can read a book where an adventure takes place to find something that was once lost. I have to admit that at first I struggled a bit with that challenge, but I ended up realizing that one of my most anticipated releases of 2019 also had a similar theme, and that book is We Hunt the Flame by Afsa Faisal. So in this book, our two main characters are trying to find a lost artifact that would restore magic into their world. So one of our main characters is a huntress who is braving the dark forest of ours to feed her people, and our second character is the Prince of Death, and he is sent to kill that huntress. This sounds so interesting, and I am just so excited to dive into it. I haven't heard that many people talk about it, so I don't really know what to expect, but this is set in an Arabian fantasy world, which I am super excited about, and I'm so glad that this was this challenge because I was looking for an excuse to read this, and now I have the perfect one. So those were all the books that I have for my Scribe TBR. Now, I'm a bit extra, and I wanted to go for all 17 prompts. So the first challenge is Crimson Peaks, and that's reread a favorite book, and for that I have Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. This is the second book in the Harry Potter series. I don't feel like I have to tell you guys the plot of this because all of us are very familiar with this, but I started rereading Harry Potter during Read by Zoe's last 24-hour readathon, and this is my first time rereading the books in English. I grew up with the French version of this series, and it has been such a great experience rereading this, and I am super excited. This is another book that I'm probably gonna read on audio because the audiobooks are incredible. I don't know why I wasn't aware of this, and I am just very much looking forward to this. I hope I can fit this in this month. The next challenge is Quindom Stone, and that's to read a book featuring royalty. For that challenge, I chose Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is the third book in the Lunar Chronicles series, and this is once again a reread for me. I started rereading this during the Owls readathon, and now I'm on to Cress, which I think might be my favorite book in the series, but I will have to reread Winter in order to like confirm. We have a lost princess, we have a queen, we have an emperor, which counts as royalty, let's be honest, and this is a Rapunzel retelling set in space, and this series is just amazing, and I just hope that I can read this month. The next challenge is The Forgotten Forest, and that's to read the next book in the series. Once again, I'm going for a reread, and for that I have The Last of August by Brittany Cavallero. This is the second book in the Sherlock Holmes series, and in this series we are following the descendants of John Watson and Sherlock Holmes, Charlotte and Jamie. I've been wanting to finish this series for a while now, and now that all the books are out, I have no excuse. I can read them all. And I reread the first book during the Biblio Games back in February, really loved it, and now I am on to The Last of August. This is another one where the audiobook is really great, so I might listen to this on audio. The next challenge is The Weeping Falls, and that's to read a tearjerker. Now, I'm not someone who cries a lot while reading. Sometimes I'll cry depending on the book, but most of the time I just don't. But I've heard that this book is super sad, so I just thought that this was perfect, and this is actually one of the recommendations from the queen herself, and I will leave Rachel's recommendation video in the description box as well, just because she did such an incredible job at recommending books for each prompt. So if you guys want to check that out, highly recommend. But the book that I picked for The Weeping Falls is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I am one of the only people who still hasn't read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but I feel like now's the time. Hopefully this will be as good as everyone says it is. I've heard that it's sad, like the ending makes you cry, and basically in this book we are following our main character Evelyn Hugo, who is an old Hollywood Scarlet from the 1950s, and one day she asks this not very well-known journalist to meet her and write her biography. Next we have Orc Grove, which is to read a book that is gruesome, gory, or gritty. And for that challenge I chose The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. I've been wanting to reread The Hunger Games ever since there has been an announcement that Susan Collins was writing a prequel to this, and I was just like, this is the perfect opportunity for me to reread this. I've been wanting to reread this series anyways for so long, and this is a perfect opportunity for me to do that. And there's quite a bit of violence in this one, and I remember it being kind of gory because of all the killing that is involved, so I thought this was the perfect fit for this challenge. I don't think I need to tell you guys the plot of this. I feel like this is a very popular and well-known series. The next challenge is Old Pirate Cove, and that's to read a book that takes place at least in part on sea, and for that I picked The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy by Mackenzie Lee. So as the title suggests, there's pirates involved, so I'm guessing that this takes part on a boat or on sea at some point. I don't know too much about the plot of this. This is a companion novel to The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, which was one of my favorite books of 2018, and I haven't heard that many great things about The Lady's Guide, and I also know that this author has become a bit problematic lately, but this is still a book that I bought like a while ago that I haven't read, so I just thought that this was perfect for this challenge. The next challenge is Glimmer, and that's to read a beautiful or a colorful book. And in my case, there was only one book that I could have chosen for this challenge, and that's Circe by Madeline Miller. I mean, look at this cover. It is absolutely glorious, incredible, just so beautiful. This is a retelling of Circe. I don't know too much about the original myth of Circe, so I cannot tell you guys too much about the plot of this, but I tried reading this back in October, November, December, like at the end of last year, or maybe it was the beginning of this year. I don't know, but I tried reading this. I read maybe 30 pages of it and I just couldn't really get into it. So I'm really hoping that this time around I will be able to read this. I've heard so many great things about this book, and hopefully I will like this because I love all things mythology. So I just feel like I might really enjoy this. I just need to give it a fair shot. The next challenge is Draconic Isle, and that's to read a book that features dragons. So this is a challenge that I really struggled with because I felt like I didn't have any books on my TBR that had dragons, and so I kind of went with a book that's kind of far-fetched, but it does involve dragons, so hopefully that fits. But that book is Soul of the Sword by Julie Kagawa. This is a sequel to Shadow of the Fox, and I was so surprised by this first book. I didn't think I would enjoy it, and I ended up being so surprised by it. I really liked it, and when I found out that the sequel was coming out this year, I jumped on the occasion. Basically, we're following our main character Yumeko, who is a shapeshifter, or also known as a kitsune, and Yumeko has one task. She has to take this old scroll and bring it to the Stillfeather Temple in order to prevent the summoning of this great demon. Now, whoever summons this demon also gets granted one wish, and this demon is actually a dragon. There are a lot of people who are trying to get the scroll for themselves so that they can summon the dragon, but Yumeko is tasked to bring it to this temple. I just feel like this fits this challenge because the great demon is a dragon, and even though it hasn't been summoned yet, I mean, the goal is not to summon him, it still involves dragons, so I just felt like this was fitting. I don't know if that's too far-fetched. There's a dragon involved, I'm counting it, and I, like I said, really enjoyed the first book in this series. Very much looking forward to seeing where the sequel goes, especially after reading that cliffhanger in the first book. I mean, I need to know what happens next. The next challenge is the Elven Guard, and that's to read a book with war, political, or military themes. And for that, I went with King of Fools by Amanda Foody. This is a sequel to Ace of Shades, and I've heard from Emma Books that this deals with more political themes. There's an election underway. I've been wanting to read this ever since it came out earlier this year. In Ace of Shades, we are following our main character, Salta, who is headed to the City of Sins to find her mother. Her mother hasn't been home in months, and so Anne takes it upon herself to find her and bring her back home. The only clue she has about her mother's whereabouts lies with this man called Levi, and Levi is also the greatest con man in the city. And so together they will try to find Anne's mother. I don't know where this is going to take us in the sequel, but I remember really loving the way it ended in the first book because it was such a cliffhanger and I just knew I wanted more. The next challenge is the Hollow Isle, and that's to read an atmospheric or horror book. Now, I am not one for horror. I actually hate horror movies and like books that have horror in them. So I went with the atmospheric vibe, and for that I chose The Vanishing Stair by Maureen Johnson. This is a YA mystery thriller, and we're following our main character Stevie, who is trying to solve this old cold case that happened at this boarding school years ago. I don't remember the exact time frame, but that old case is actually a triple murder and a kidnapping that happened at the very boarding school that Stevie is attending. The murders were signed Truly Devious, and once again, Truly Devious is striking. In the first book, someone gets murdered and it's signed by Truly Devious, and so that means that Truly Devious has returned and Stevie is now more ready than ever to solve this case once and for all. So I really enjoyed the first book. I didn't love it as much as everyone else seemed to have, but I'm still very excited to read the sequel. I mean, the world is established, the story is established, so I'm very much looking forward to see where things go for Stevie in this sequel. The next challenge is Empty Barrel Inn, and that's to read an indulgent read, and for that I chose an arc, and that book is Well Met by Jen DeLuca. This is a romance novel that is set in a Renaissance fair. I know nothing about this book besides that fact. I think there's an enemy to lover situation going on, but I've heard great things about it. I think Riley Marie has read it recently and really enjoyed it. I know the book is not due to come out until September 3rd, I believe, or sometime in September, but I still wanted to read it. For me, romance is a very indulgent genre. This is kind of my guilty pleasure. Like I said earlier on, romance is a genre that I read pretty quickly, so this is perfect for when I'm starting to feel a little reading slump, and I'm so excited for this. I've never really read any Renaissance Fair books, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing what this one is. The final challenge, I know, we are finally there, is Giant Squid, and that's to read a book that intimidates you, and for that I chose Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I don't know if it's because it's a classic or if it's because it's a big book. That's the anthology with all Jane Austen's 7 novels. I don't know if it's a Victorian era style, the fact that it's really old and it's considered a classic. I don't know. It's kind of really intimidating. Also, it's kind of a big book. The audiobook is like 11 hours long, and I plan on reading this via audio, but for some reason this book really intimidates me, and I've been putting off reading Jane Austen all year long because if you remember correctly, one of my goals for 2019 was to read the entirety of Jane Austen's work, and we're in July and I still haven't read a single book of hers. So that's it for my Book Junkie Trials TBR. Now I'm also planning on participating in the Basically Readathon. It's a 24-hour readathon hosted by Basically Brit that is happening on July 6th, and the only challenge for that readathon is to read a book that has been on your TBR forever. Since it is happening during the Book Junkie Trials, I will be picking books from my Book Junkie Trials TBR. I have 3 options. Ideally, I would be able to reread Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets because that's been a book that I have been wanting to reread for a while now, and I just feel like 24-hour readathons are the perfect opportunities for me to read that. I've reread the first Harry Potter during a 24-hour readathon, so I feel like this would be cool to be able to reread the second Harry Potter during another 24-hour readathon. However, like I said, I am prioritizing the books that I have to read as described. So I might not be able to reread Harry Potter, and so I have 2 other options of books that I could read during this readathon. The first one is Call Me By Your Name by Andrea Ackman. Like I said, this has been on my TBR for over a year now. But we also have Legendary by Stephanie Garber. Once again, something that has been on my TBR for a while now, and I've been wanting to read this, and it's actually the book that I picked for the book that has been on my TBR forever for the Book Junkie Trials. I will be vlogging my experience, so if you guys want to know what I end up choosing, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss this readathon vlog. The last readathon that I plan on participating in July is the Reading Rush, previously known as the Booktubeathon, and it's happening from July 22nd until July 28th. I will actually be doing a separate video for that TBR because I haven't really picked my books for that yet. It is obvious that I will be choosing books that I presented in this video. I mean, I already have 17 books to read for the Book Junkie Trial, so I'm not going to add more books just for the Reading Rush. Like I said, I will be filming another video for that, so make sure you subscribe if you're not already so that you don't miss it. But now that's it for my July TBR. I know this was a long video. I have so many books that I want to read in July. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all of them. Probably not. I'm probably being a little bit over ambitious, but if you guys are participating in the Book Junkie Trials or any of the other readathons that I've mentioned, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to know what you guys are planning on reading in July as well. So even if you're not participating in any readathon, let me know what you plan on reading in July. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to give this a big thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not already, and I guess that's it, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!